Sometimes you watch a cable news segment and it's literally like watching a light bulb go off in the most elitist brains in the United Corporations of America. And I saw a segment on Andy Cooper, 360 last night that really was telling. It really was telling. So I'm about to give Anderson Cooper a bit of a backwards, what do they say? Backwards compliment? Yes, a backhanded compliment, that is. Anderson Cooper had a woman who suffers from diabetes on last night. She works for Mallory. Her name is Mallory Logre, and she's a federal worker for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who is now basically rationing her insulin, because she's not getting paid. This is probably not the only person who is basically sacrificing medicine for food, or sacrificing medicine to not get a massive hospital bill. So I want to play you some of this, and I think Anderson Cooper's expressions and response really tells a lot about who it is that our country is putting forth as quote-unquote journalists. Here we go.
This last weekend, I didn't wear my insulin pump at all. I just took it off because I was so frightened about what little insulin I did have left, and we couldn't afford the $300 copay to buy anymore. So I
So you just didn't do any, you didn't take any?
Yep, I took my insulin pump off, and then there was one night where I checked my blood sugar, and it was almost 600, which is about triple about what it should be. And at that point, you can go into diabetic ketoacidosis, diabetic coma, and I thought.
Now, I don't want to. We're gonna continue playing that. I don't want to mock good old Andy over there. But do you see that man's face? Do you see that man's face? Do you see him for the first time understanding that many, I would say the large majority of Americans are one health emergency from either death or bankruptcy? Anderson Cooper looks like he just stole his lunch money. Anderson Cooper looks like he just saw Casper the Friendly Ghost. Anderson Cooper looks shocked. What do you mean you had to ration? I don't understand. You don't have money to pay for the insulin while you're out of work? We'll continue.
No end in sight for the shutdown. I can't afford an ambulance bill. I can't afford to go to the emergency room right now because I know there's more bills coming our way. So, yep, I went to bed and just hoped I'd wake up, as kind of like morbid as it sounds, but like, yeah.
You actually thought, I mean, given how high your levels were, you actually thought you might die. And that was something, rather than go to the hospital and risk the bills from that, you just decided to take that gamble?
Yep, that was my choice that day. And
again, look at that face. Look at that face. He looks like he doesn't, like, what do you mean? I thought everybody could go to the emergency room and it won't bankrupt you. I have great health insurance from AT&T. What is CNN now? I think AT&T bought CNN, so now it's under the umbrella of those evil criminals at AT&T. Don't even get me started. Don't get me started on AT&T. The amount of time I wasted this week on the phone trying to get a human being from AT&T. But I digress. We'll continue a little bit more. And I know it's kind of mean because Anderson Cooper deserves credit for having her on, but I have to point out the obvious that he is absolutely stunned because most of these people, like good old Andy Cooper, live in their own little bubble in New York City. And Anderson Cooper, by the way, he's a Vanderbilt. Anderson Cooper is a Vanderbilt. So Anderson Cooper has not struggled for health care in his life. We're going to continue this. And again, I'm not trying to be mean to good old Andy because he deserves credit. He had her on. He's covering the real human effects of the shutdown. But it's very telling when you see the aristocracy, the bourgeoisie, which Anderson Cooper is a part of, basically just like they're learning for the first time that people can't afford healthcare in this country. And I'm going to make a larger point. About Andy, CNN, and all them. So, and by the way, this is upsetting Jen. She loves Anderson Cooper. Here we go.
I do not.
Don't lie.
Nobody knew. My family didn't know. My husband didn't even know that I was rationing. It's sick, but like the thought of having more debt was scarier than the thought of maybe dying in my sleep.
I can't imagine you going to bed that night thinking you might die, and not telling your husband. And I mean, it's just awful. If
That's the most honest thing I've heard Anderson Cooper said probably in a long time. He literally can't imagine. He can't, because he goes to bed in his silk and gold-plated blankets, but he really can't imagine, and that's the problem, because I've worked in these places. I worked at MSNBC, I worked at Fox for a dark time in my life. All of these people are doing fairly well. Like me, at my lowest paying job in corporate media, I started at about $43,000. That's not rich, but it's not poverty either. Like a single man could live off of $43,000 a year. And that's like the basement level for most of these jobs in corporate media. But Anderson Cooper's not making $43,000. He's making $43,000 probably a minute. We'll continue.
if lawmakers or the president are watching, what would you say to them tonight? What do you want politicians to know?
There's thousands of people affected by this. Some people are facing homelessness. And then another thing that makes me so upset is how somebody could say, oh, they're fine, they're on a paid vacation.
That's what somebody in the Trump administration said, that it was like having a paid vacation.
Yup. Yeah. It's that's heartbreaking to hear that, and that some people think that, and there's just that's a myth. I don't know any of my coworkers who are having a good time right now. So
I don't mean to be mean. I know, let's not pick on Andy, but Anderson Cooper, credit for having the segment, credit for covering it in the first place, but that's where the kindness ends. Because I don't know if Anderson Cooper realizes this, because this is the first thing I thought when I saw this. What really stood out to me, and I'd love to know what you think in the super chat, does Anderson Cooper realize that this isn't like just a unique situation for the government shutdown? Does he not realize that there's people, who desperately need insulin that are not government workers that sometimes go to bed without taking insulin and ration because they don't have the money for any more insulin, and they would rather risk possibly not waking up than the debt that's going to come from having to buy more insulin, which they don't have money? Does Andy not realize that? Because I give him credit. I give him credit that he did the segment. But why isn't it Anderson Cooper covering these kinds of issues when it's not a government shutdown? Because there's people like Mallory all over this country that are struggling for health care, whether it's insulin, whether it's mental health services, whether it's physical ailments, whether it's pre-screening for cancer. I could go on. And I'm sure many of you in the super chat also have struggled getting health care access, mental health access, dental. I mean, I've spent, in 2018, I spent at least $5,500 to $6,000 on two root canals, and the cost that went with that after I got laid off. I didn't have dental anymore. So, it's watching that. On one end, I'm happy he did it in the first place, but on the other end, two things are quite telling. Number one, look at the man's face. He's in disbelief that human beings, American citizens, could be in a position to literally ration their medicine, literally go to bed and take the gamble that you won't wake up. Because a lot of people have diabetes that bad where they have to take insulin or routinely, or they won't wake up. He didn't understand that because our corporate propaganda media is a bunch of elitist, cocktail crowd, caviar inhaling scumbags, if you ask me. I just thought this was important to point out because, number one, Anderson Cooper, he looks like he just lost his best friend, that image. He looks like he just doesn't understand because when Anderson Cooper breaks his toe, he gets seen right away. When Anderson Cooper, isn't feeling well, he gets seen right away. When Anderson Cooper thinks he might have, something serious, he gets seen right away. Not just seen right away, but by the best of the best doctors in America. So do all his colleagues at CNN. So do all his colleagues from his parent company, AT&T. So do all his colleagues from the bank industry that the corporate media bows to, from the fossil fuel industry that the corporate media bows to, from Big Pharma that the corporate media bows to, and Big Pharma that's actually the reason people like Mallory have to ration insulin. I could go on and on and on. So, bravo, Anderson, for having the segment. Bravo for covering it. But why don't you do this more regularly? All of CNN, all of MSNBC, all of the New York Times, because this isn't unique to the government shutdown. There's people rationing literally sleeping pills. There's literally people rationing mental health pills. I did it. I had to ration. I was supposed to take X milligram of my antidepressant, but I cut it in half because I didn't know if I was going to have health care the next month. This was last year. You know, and I'm not trying to pick on Anderson Cooper, because Anderson Cooper's a dime a, what do they call it? Dime a dozen. But it's all of them. I mean, look at people like Wolf Blitzer, that walking mannequin. Look at people like Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. You think they have trouble getting health care? And by the way, again, yes, I feel for the government employees in this shutdown. It's a ridiculous shutdown over a stupid wall that, frankly, I think is ridiculous and we don't need and is a sign of bigotry, if you ask me. With that being said, we need to have an emergency discussion about the fact I met people. When I reported for the Young Turks, and even after, now it's status quo, I've met people who are literally deciding for medicine for themselves or medicine for their kids. Medicine, period, for themselves, or groceries that week for their kid. This is not the exception to the rule, Anderson Cooper. This is the rule. This is the majority of this country is struggling for basic health care. Why? So the people that own your company, so the people that you regurgitate propaganda for, can buy more yachts. Because make no mistake about it, I respect Anderson Cooper, some of what he did. He has gone and covered earthquakes and natural disasters, and he's done a good job. But other than that, he's just another dime a dozen propagandist, if you ask me. And it's his responsibility for how much he's making. I mean, I'm covering it better in an office with one light out. My glasses are broken. I don't have any makeup on, and I'm telling you the truth. And trust me, I ain't making anything near what Anderson Cooper's making. This rationing is not just unique to like the current situation. This is year-round, 24/7 for many Americans who have to ration, whether it's insulin, whether it's mental health drugs, whether it's medicine for pain, you name it. And by the way, the very big pharmaceutical companies that are advertising on CNN, Andy, guess what? They're the reason we don't have legalized marijuana that can help for most of the ailments in this country. Not all, but many of the ailments. They're the reason that people have to jump through hoops, people that are sick, people with cancer, to get plants that can help them.